Good evening, everyone. Want to reassure the Singaporeans that Venerable Chudran is okay. And she understands she was quite sick when she left you a few days ago, and so she is concerned that you might be concerned when you see her not sitting here, but she's actually okay, but her voice has not returned yet. So we're giving her a break for a little while and continuing tonight with the review. So let's start with our motivation. And to do this, we will actually turn to our root text and take this straight from the Gomchen Lamrim. We're following on last week's review of the 9-point death meditation and recalling, if you were there or heard it, the reflection on imagining our own death. And the text says, "Thus you will soon die. You have no time to stay. When this occurs, you will not cease to exist, but according to your karma will be propelled towards and born into one of two kinds of rebirth. If you fall into a lower rebirth, torments will be numerous and unbearable. Contemplating the sufferings of the hell beings, of heat, cold, of hungry spirits who are emaciated from hunger and thirst, from the overwhelming stupidity of animals, for a very, very long time. If you cannot bear just the prick of a thorn, ask yourself, what will happen when you face the lower realm's torments? And so bodhisattvas reflect not just on this potential suffering for themselves, if we're headed on the bodhisattva path, but also that this is a possibility for every single being we know, every being we don't know, don't remember that we know. Life after life after life after rebirth after rebirth after life after rebirth. And so what do we do? So paying attention to the extraordinary fortune we have at this very moment, in this very birth, that we have met the teachings and the teacher, the Buddha himself, who shows us what we can do. We take refuge out of alarm at our own possible future. We take refuge with confidence in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to guide us. We take refuge because we're concerned about everybody experiencing this fate. So with that concern for ourselves and for all others, we'll engage in this review tonight where we talk about refuge, deepening our understanding in order to create the causes to liberate ourselves and to be able to liberate all living beings. Set that as our motivation. We don't always spend much time thinking about these lower realm rebirths, but that's exactly where we are in this Lamrim teaching. And it's, whether we hold that as a real possibility in terms of realms, or whether we just look at it in terms of mental states, whatever way works for us. We can imagine, if we let ourselves, that, the kind of rage, the kind of hatefulness that comes in the mind can, given the right circumstances, we could get stuck there for a long time. And the suffering of that would be pretty unbearable. The suffering of all the people in that state, unbearable. And so, what do we do? Jai Rinpoche quotes Shantideva, "If I neglect to cultivate virtue even when I have the good fortune to do so, what shall I do when I am confused by the sufferings of the miserable realms? Saying, 'Who will protect me from this great terror?' I will stare aghast and search all around for a refuge. Seeing no refuge anywhere, I will be completely dejected. If there is no refuge there, what will I do? Thus, from today, I go for refuge to the conqueror, protector of living beings, the one who strives to rescue living beings, the mighty one who dispels all fear." So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Go for refuge to the conqueror, the mighty one who dispels all fear, the Dharma that is transmitted by that conqueror, and the Sangha, who are the practitioners who are on the way to becoming just like the Buddha. So I don't know if people online did not see Venerable Japa's review of the 12 links last night. It's a really strong motivator. I suggest taking a look. But given the topics we've been looking at in the last week here, from going from that review on the, the immediate preceding Lamrim topics of death, and then going into our Vajrasattva retreat, where we've been looking at purifying our negativities, and then again last night on the 12 links, I think we're getting good and ready to do a refuge retreat. And there's tons and tons and tons of material. Venerable Children taught this in this class for 2 weeks, so there's about 3 hours of talks on this topic. She taught extensively on this from the aspect of learning what are the 4 bodies of the Buddha when we did the Green Tara retreat. She taught some days, I don't even know how many, when she was teaching from Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions, the refuge section there. So recently we have had a lot of teachings on refuge that are really useful. So there's a lot of material. I have a lot here, and we will see how far we go, because I also want some participation here. Okay. So as we move forward in the text, we're at the part in the outline where it says, "Relying on the methods for happiness in future lives," if you have your text. So relying upon the method for happiness in future lives, those desiring liberation take as a refuge those who are entirely free of faults, possess all the various good qualities as they do the Dharma and the Arya Sangha. So, do we recall what are the causes for taking refuge?
Corrected on one of them was
awareness of the
alarm at the lower
alarm,
limits.
right?
He had said fear, just said that was a little.
Not alarm.
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 Alarm at the possibility of unfortunate
Rebirths. Confidence that the 3 jewels are going to help us to.
Confidence that the 3 jewels will guide us.
Compassion for living beings.
Concern, compassion for all living beings. I just said them, actually. Yeah, exactly that. So what's interesting to me about this, I've studied this for years and years and years and years. Alarm, the possibility of taking unfortunate rebirths, understanding the qualities of the 3 jewels and their ability to guide us. So we have this conviction, confidence, and with compassion, taking refuge to be able to guide all beings to full awakening, to alleviate their dukkha. But when I sit in Buddhist groups and say, is this the reason you took refuge? I have yet to meet a person who said, yes, that is what when I first took refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, say in the formal ceremony, this is what propelled me. Anybody in this group?
We studied it, I know, but I don't think it was in my mind the day that I did.
The lower arms, not directly, but the suffering of the lower arms. That kind of, the suffering you can, not in the lower arms, but you can experience as a human being.
Yeah. So the suffering as a human being. So suffering was a part of that for you.
Suffering of samsara.
Would you say that the dukkha of samsara, the suffering of samsara, the suffering more than dukkha? Would you say, like the suffering of suffering more than the more subtle, like suffering of change, the unsatisfactory, the dukkha of change,
Disillusionment with samsara.
overall disillusionment with samsara.
Suffering mind.
Yeah, suffering mind.
Didn't know about all pervasive conditioning.
Didn't know about all
But
pervasive
the first
conditioning,
two
yes. Okay. So concern or alarm at the unsatisfactoriness of cyclic existence in general, maybe the lower realms?
Well,
Nah, maybe.
I thought hell was over with when
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah. And then confidence in the three jewels, true?
There was some there.
Mhm.
Some
Dharma for
confidence?
sure.
No confidence.
I think I understood what they were. Really.
Yeah.
I just knew that I felt that I was heading in the right direction.
It's the right direction, but what were the three jewels? Yeah. And then concern for other living beings? Yeah.
Some living beings.
Some concern for some living beings. Okay.
Friends and
Okay,
family.
there we go.
Especially those we are kind of depending on, like,
Attached to.
even in our own city,
Yeah.
when they suffer, okay, I will suffer too. So therefore-
Yeah. So people we're close to, people we depend on, even our neighbors kind of. Yeah, like that. And so we merrily take refuge. We're happy, we do a ceremony.
You get a name.
We get a name, depending, just almost every time you get a name. And then,
Go back and submerge some samsara.
back into samsara. Often. And, something propelled us into this. But I think it is interesting, and especially now as we're preparing for this retreat and going into it, looking at when in my practice did I really begin to take refuge with these three causes? Have I yet? To what extent? To what depth? So even the beginning, three causes of taking refuge. Alarm, concern about lower rebirths, confidence in the three jewels, compassion for other living beings, okay. No, really, do we have that yet? And then what happens then when we take refuge? What are we doing? So I think it's worth thinking about and exploring. And then deepening. Like, oh yeah, where was I? And where am I? And how can I deepen this understanding? Because it is on this foundation that we take everything else. If our refuge is a shaky foundation, then every other set of precepts we have is also shaky. It's not on firm ground. And now I'm quoting from His Holiness, I didn't bring the book out, from Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Positions. He says, traditions, I believe there can be different levels of refuge in the three jewels. And people may take refuge at a level that's comfortable and appropriate for them. So, as I think Venerable noted, that there are people who read a Dharma book, call themselves Buddhists, and really feel that connection, and never practice and never meet their teacher. Actually, okay. While His Holiness says, though, people may take refuge for a variety of reasons, stable refuge comes from knowing and understanding the teachings through reasoning and experience, thus confirming for ourselves that the Buddha's teachings are true. So that's our job. Whatever level we've taken refuge at, it's not to in some way I can't think of a word besides diss. I can't think of something better. To diss our own motivation. I mean, yeah, how incredibly fortunate that we had the conditions to come together, to hear the Buddha's teachings, to have an opportunity to explore them, and they registered in our minds. You know, we have that quality of our precious human life that says, yes, yes, I want to pursue this. But as Venerable says later, I was taking this from another teaching that she gave on the Manjushri practice, that, you know, sometimes we take refuge, it's the beginning of our practice, it's a beginning thing, and then we're off. We're like, let's do something bigger, better, higher. But this is really important to explore. So to do that, that's what we're going to do tonight. So to take refuge in a proper way, we need to identify and have a clear understanding of the three jewels. That deeper refuge. Okay, so yeah, I needed to belabor that point. The more, and it's a process. It's a long-term relationship. I think you said that that deepens over time. That our refuge really changes as we practice and have more experience and deeper understanding and more, yeah. So it doesn't stop right up until we become the refuge ourselves. And then that's what this is a process of becoming that. Okay, so the second point in the text, the reason for their being worthy of refuge. So we identify Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are the refuge that can lead us away from this possible, well, all suffering, actually, in the long term. His Holiness says the three jewels are called jewels because they are rare and precious. Like the mythical, wish-fulfilling jewel that grants all wishes and needs, they are continuously willing and capable of providing us refuge. Continuously willing and capable of providing us refuge, protecting us from samsara's dukkha, and showing us the way to attain lasting, pure, and bliss fulfillment. The next point, what makes refuge effective? The text says, if you ask what makes a practice of refuge effective, a beautiful body, splendid with the glory of the complete signs and marks, speech that with a single line answers all queries at once, wisdom and compassion that directly encompass the sphere of all objects of knowledge, activity that is spontaneous and ceaseless. These, in brief, are a Buddha's good qualities. So when Venerable Tudren was teaching this, she read some beautiful quotes from the Lamrim Chenmo. And also, I mean, there's so many different ways to look at the qualities of the Buddha. So there's the 10 powers. There's the 18 qualities that are not shared with arhats. There's the Buddha's enlightening activity. There are the qualities of the Buddhas by looking at the Buddha's body, qualities of the Buddha by looking at the Buddha's speech, qualities of the Buddha by looking at the Buddha's mind, and then looking at the Buddha's enlightening activity. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful verses and similes. So I was, thinking about how to encapsulate all of that, because that's pages and pages and pages of stuff. But then I thought I would go to this, go to J. Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapa himself, in this wonderful little book, The Splendor of an Autumn Moon, which is the translated devotional verses of Lama Tsongkhapa. It has a beautiful praise of the Buddha in here. It's not that long. I was just going to pull out some verses, and then I thought, well, I want to do that verse, and I want to do that verse, and I want to do that verse, and I want to do that verse. And if we listen, actually, he makes reference to some of the 10 powers. He makes reference to some of the qualities of the body, the qualities of the speech, the qualities of the mind. And he makes reference to the enlightened activities of the Buddha and so forth. So, shall I read it? It's not that long. Is it okay if I do that? I think it's a beautiful way of looking at what are the qualities of the Buddha, and then we'll talk about it a little bit when he. Praise of the Buddha, the unrivaled lion of the Shakyas. Indra, king of the gods, his enemy, the Asura leader, Pramudita, celestial musician king, Naga kings and great rishis beautify their lotus feet with the jewels, beautify your lotus feet with the jewels of their crowns. Glorious body bathing in splendor of its golden glow, voice unrivaled even by melodies of celestial music, mind brighter than the 10 million suns, guide supreme for infinite living beings, paragon of the Shakyas. Moon and stars on a cloudless night appear crystal clear in the midst of a lake. So in the clear waters of my untroubled mind are your qualities reflected one by one. Fingertips fold at my heart like a lotus touched by moonlight. Single-pointedly I hold you before me. You of great compassion, heed this modest praise. Ringed by noble bodhisattvas as the moon is circled by stars, leading your arhat entourage as the mighty bull leads the herd, the skies were filled with 1,000,000 garlands of golden light as you soared through the sky to arrive like the king of swans in a magical display of corporal power. At that time, thousands of gods and men beheld your face, awakened by seeds of wholesome deeds stored over ages, their untamed minds at once loosened from the chains of countless faults. Under your Bodhi tree, great warrior, like a violent wind in a dark storm, you overwhelmed Mara's hosts with an army of compassion and wisdom. Without weapon, without armor, you routed unaided 1,000,000 demons. Other than you, who could fight such battles? With the fire of love, you scorched the hearts of lustful gods, while remaining to all a jewel of compassion without favor or displeasure, unceasing even momentarily in your work for others who are unceasing likewise in praise of your qualities. Mind as deep as an ocean, words resounding like the celestial drum. Body taller even than Meru, you are meaningful to see, hear, or bring to mind. Were every living being of every world to raise simultaneously individual doubts, in front of each would you simultaneously display as many creations of body and of word, and yet you would not have stirred. Such mysteries of body, speech, and mind are not in the experience of bodhisattvas, hearers, and solitary practitioners, however they try. What need to mention Brahma, Indra, and others? The mighty Garuda hawk wings its way onward, onward through the skies, but untiring turns and heads for home. The skies, however, lie unhindered by such limitation. To talk of your qualities is likewise. Like a tiny bird yearning to follow the path traveled by the mighty Garuda, in whom the art of flight is perfected, I long to travel that great highway to the throne of the 10 powers. But my mind's eye is of sight too weak to see the reality of phenomena. I am impoverished, moreover, by the lack of Bodhi mind and true renunciation, persecuted constantly by enemy-like delusions of mind cast headlong into the pit of grasping to self. Were I abandoned by you in such a wretched state, what other guardian who gazes on the pitiful with such tremendous love could I turn to for refuge? When this realm, sullied by the 5 remains, was ignored by others but adopted by you, what need was there for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to praise and liken you to the White Lotus? Within your deeds, however, no trace of neglect or indifference towards any disciple is found. Solely by my own faults, therefore, am I rendered so unfortunate, and no failing is attached to you. Therefore, until under the Bodhi tree I emerge victorious over the hosts of Mara, I pray to be cared for life after life by you, and never tire of your nectar-like words. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? And so you see, I mean, you hear in here, right, some of the particular qualities of the Buddha. Like what? What did you hear? Untiring activity, unceasing. Yeah, what else?
Oh, being surrounded, like the moon being surrounded by limitless stars, the entourage of arhats, bodhisattvas,
Yeah.
solitary realizers.
The entourage of bodhisattvas, arhats, blazing like that mind, right? The mind blazing like light, like
A
that.
million moons, 100 million moons.
Yeah. The love he was praising, the great compassion he was praising, skill, that whole thing about were all these disciples to raise a doubt? If you came before each one of them, you could speak, change their mind, and never have stirred, right? The Buddha's mind never leaves meditative equipoise on emptiness and yet acts spontaneously to benefit every living being without having to think about it, without having to plan it, without having to, send up a memo or write out a plan. There. Knows exactly what, and can do it to the whole crowd, however big the crowd is, all at once. Unlike us, who, plow through the books, spend all afternoon cribbing from books, and no. So, we talked about the 4 fearlessnesses, the 10 qualities of the Buddha. Remember too, the Buddha knows all of his own past lives, all of everybody else's past lives, the paths that each person take. All of that, spontaneous, boom, right there. Not a single solitary being is left out of the Buddha's attention at any time. Not one. The Lamrim book I have studied from FPMT has this line that says, the Buddha is never so indifferent as to not check up on what the disciples are needing at any given moment. Like, never says, oh, I'm going to go have tea now. Never so indifferent as to not check up. So, as Venerable Children says, we take refuge in the causal Buddha, the causal Dharma, and the causal Sangha. The ones that already exist external to us. We take refuge in their guidance so that we can become the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha ourselves. When we become that, when our mind is completely liberated from all defilements, then we can emanate these bodies and do these things too. This comes from taking refuge. Right? So refuge is a very profound practice. All right, so we talked about the qualities of the Buddha. We also, I don't think she did it in this teaching, but she has also taught lately a lot about the bodies of the Buddha, the 2 kayas, the 4 kayas, the however many kayas you divide them up. But the simplest way is to talk about them in terms of 2. So there's the Dharmakaya, which means the truth body. Rupakaya means the form body. When we say body, it's not blood, guts, bone. It's this collection of qualities. So the Dharmakaya is the aspects of the Buddha's mind. the omniscient mind and the emptiness of that mind. And then the Rupakaya, the form body, is the different manifestations that come out of that mind in order for us to be able to actually relate to the Buddha. So this, and I won't go into this, but I mean, it's just good, I think, to hold this view. It's not like the Buddha's way, 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 way out there, gone somewhere, some mind in space. But that in fact, the whole Rupakaya thing, the whole appearances, those emanation bodies come for our benefit. So then there are the qualities of the Dharma. So as far as the Dharma is concerned, we can ask, how did the Buddha attain all these qualities?
Practicing the Dharma.
Practicing the Dharma. So that's the characteristic of the Dharma. True paths, true cessations. Right? Cultivating that are the qualities that bring us to Buddhahood. Then when we actualize those true paths, then we have the power to remove the ignorance from our own minds. And then, she says it's like the medicine that cures a fever. We begin to remove the ignorance from our mind. They're like medicine that cures a fever. Then through taking that medicine to the true paths, we arrive at the true cessations, which are the cessations for all the afflictions. And that is like taking medicine to keep something from recurring. Right? And then the Sangha, by hearing, contemplating, and meditating, 3 kinds of wisdom that come from those activities. They're practicing to create merit. So they are actualizing the true paths and true cessations in their minds. They teach others. They're fair and compassionate, and they are in the process of eradicating their afflictions once and for all. So they're good examples for us to follow. We have questions, doubts, we can go to the Sangha and ask. Now, do we know who the Arya Sangha are? No. But we can look at someone like His Holiness, for example. Look at his qualities. Think, well, there's some realizations there, don't you think? This might be a reliable guide. Someone whose teachings I can trust, who's right there. So that's a really general way of looking at these 3 when there are many, many lists. But I personally think that it's very easy to do the lists and just do the list. That we have to get in there and think about, what does that mean? What does that mean? So one of the things that I think is extremely interesting, and I wanted to highlight and spend some time on, Venerable also taught on this thing about taking refuge, which is also in Lamrim Chimmo, taking refuge by knowing the distinguishing features of the 3 jewels. What's the difference between them? Joe Blow could say, the 3 jewels have so many good qualities, isn't it okay to just take refuge in one? Well, why not?
Well, for me, I need to have, if I'm going to take refuge in the Dharma, I want to know that there's somebody out there who's realized it and has come to be an example, or to be like an example. If I take the Buddha as my one refuge, then I kind of go, well, I get into magical thinking. Well, he just appeared out of nowhere. He's causeless. He's just sort of like God. Mm-hmm. And then the Sangha, well, they're just out there out of, Sangha University, and they're about as far away as the Buddha is too. So, so I got to put them all together. They got to
Yeah, they
Yeah.
all work together. They all work together. So it's very cool to go through these different characteristics. And Venerable said it's good to contemplate these in meditation, so we'll think about those when we do retreat. When you see the difference in the characteristics, then you see why we have to take refuge in all three. Okay, so there are 6 ways that are enumerated in which the Buddha and the Dharma are different from each other. First, they are different in terms of their characteristics. So the Buddha's characteristic is the Buddha has abandoned all defects, developed all good qualities. That means the complete abandonments and the complete realizations. Which means what?
Omniscience.
Omniscience. What does that mean, the abandonments and the realizations? Abandonments and realizations. They have abandoned all afflictions. The stains of afflictions. All defilements. Everything there is to be abandoned has been abandoned.
Every single seed.
Every single seed. And the realizations are?
What is
The
behind
true
all
true paths, yeah, the true cessations.
Nirvana, total peace, blissful,
Blissful, pure peace, nirvana, the nature of reality.
pure compassion.
Completely permeated with bodhicitta. Right? Buddha also can see the 2 truths simultaneously. They are fully omniscient. Conventional truth, ultimate truth, same time. How? I guess they debate that a lot. But indeed, they say it's so. So the Dharma characteristics are the true paths and the true cessations. That's what we were just talking about. So it's what the Buddha taught. Meets the needs of sentient beings. And teaching the Dharma is the reason why the Buddha appeared in this world. That's worth meditating on for a little bit too. Teaching the Dharma is the reason why the Buddha appeared in this world. The Buddha had no other reason to appear in this world. Shakyamuni Buddha, any Buddha. Why? To liberate sentient beings. It's the only way. It's their MO. It's the only way. It's the only way a Buddha can affect and bring us out of cyclic existence is to teach us so that we can do it ourselves. Right? So if the Buddha's whole mission for however long is to liberate every single sentient being, the Buddha comes to full awakening. What to do? Teach. Because that's why you became a Buddha, to liberate sentient beings. And you can't do it any other way. If, as Venerable often says, if they could have, they would have done something. They would have taken it away. They can't. We have to participate. We have to do it, but the Buddha has to teach it. The Dharma is what the Buddha is teaching, and then the Sangha are the characteristics of the ones who've realized the Dharma. As I said before, they guide us so that we can do the same. And as Venerable Simke was saying, the Sangha works to prove the validity of everything the Buddha taught. Because they've actualized the major part of it, or they're in the process of that. So they're the proof. Is this true? When I first went with Venerable children to Singapore, Trinfa said, "Oh, you're Exhibit A." Sangha, Exhibit A, B, C, D, E, infinitely. Showing. Okay, secondly, take refuge in terms of their awakening influence, and each of the three has a different influence. So the Buddha gives the transmitted Dharma that leads to the realizational Dharma. And his awakening activity is to tell us what to practice and what to abandon. The Dharma's awakening influence is that it eliminates the afflictions and suffering. The Sangha's awakening influence encourages us and gives us inspiration and assistance in practicing the Dharma. They are our companions. We are not alone on the path. However we might feel at times, we are not alone on the path. The third way, the aspiration or fervent regard for each of them is different. So with the Buddha, we aspire to make offerings. We have respect and we rely with an attitude of humility and devotion. We have a sense of gratitude for their kindness, and we offer not just material but also our service and a practice. The Dharma, we aspire to put the Dharma into practice. Transforming our minds into the Dharma shows our respect or fervent regard for the Dharma. See how that would make sense? Transforming our minds into the Dharma by practicing the Dharma shows our respect and fervent regard for the Dharma, our appreciation for the Buddha's teaching. And then our aspirations or fervent regard for the Sangha by practicing together with them, by joining them in their efforts to make the Dharma a living force. And when she was teaching it, Venerable added, create peace in a chaotic world. That's our aspiration or fervent regard for the Sangha. So number 4 is how we practice in terms of each of the 3 jewels. So we practice differently in regard to each of them. The Buddha is a model for what we want to become. So, we bow, we make offerings, we respect them, we ask them to teach, we ask them not to pass away. We use the Buddha as a field of merit. Because of the Buddha's great realizations, any virtuous action we do becomes very powerful. Then she went on to talk a little bit about the Buddha cares more about himself, or what the Buddha cares about more than himself is other sentient beings. Right? Not other sentient beings, sentient beings. Buddha is not a sentient being. So that is what, that force, that care, and cultivating that is what propelled the Buddha to become a Buddha. And so I think she was drawing our attention away from only focusing on the Buddha and not focusing on sentient beings. When Geshe Sopa was here, he used this analogy about, he was teaching on cultivating fortitude and patience, but he talked about how important it is to care for sentient beings if we're going to have care for the Buddha. If we're going to care for the Buddha, if we're going to show our regard for the Buddha, then we care for sentient beings. And the analogy was so vivid. He said, if you have a friend who has children, and you only love that friend, but you disregard the children, it will have a damaging relationship with you and the mother, right? If you care about that friend who has children, you care about her children. And when you care about her children, then your relationship there is stronger. Yeah. So if we care about the Buddha, who cares only about sentient beings, then caring about sentient beings is caring for the Buddha. And so it's not, I don't know if it's on the list, but this fervent regard part also, I think, in the thing that's above here. So this is how we practice in terms of the 3 jewels, but also I think it's a sign of fervent regard. That's my opinion. It's not the text. How we practice in terms of the Dharma, we meditate on it. We integrate it with our body, speech, and mind. We practice in our daily life. We practice to become. to have the Dharma realizations in our own mind. And the Sangha, we practice together with them. We share the teachings, we share material possessions with them, we follow their example. The qualities to be mindful of is point 5. Things to remember regarding the 3 jewels. From the Buddha, be mindful that he has eliminated ignorance, anger, and attachment, has developed all wisdom to the highest degree, has developed compassion in all the realizations of the method side. So to remember that the Buddha is fully omniscient and leads us to awakening. Things to remember, to be mindful of regarding the Dharma. Mindful or remember that it brings good results in the beginning, the middle, and the end. So it's important to have a Dharma motivation in relation to really everything we do. And if we act with Dharma in our heart throughout, to be mindful of that. And then things to be mindful of the Sangha, that they're on the right path, they are impartial, so they are true friends, true objects of respect. They give us companionship, friendship, and encouragement along the path. And the 6th one, the last one, is how we create merit in terms of each of them. So with the Buddha, we make offerings. We said that before. Prostrate, requested them to stay and teach our 7-limb practice. We offer a Dharma wheel and a double dorje. Dharma, we create merit by developing in our mind stream and integrating it into our life. And with the Sangha, we create merit by doing virtuous practices together and making offerings to them and respecting them. So just from looking at, this is kind of off the cuff, but how would you characterize then, how come you need all 3, or what's the relationship? Do you see a pattern in there? I'm just asking for people's perception. It's not in the text either, or it's not in the teachings, but it's like, It's a dependency among the 3.
Among the 3, the example of the doctor who prescribes the medicine.
Yeah.
The Dharma and the nurses, the Sangha helps you to take the medicine.
The doctor prescribes the medicine. The Dharma is the medicine which we have to take in order to have it be effective. And then the Sangha are the nurses that help, the aides that help. Which is what this next point is, taking refuge through accepting the 3 ideals, the 3 jewels as ideals. The Dharma, the Buddha is the doctor. The Buddha has diagnosed our illness, knows what it is, knows why we have it, and knows what we have to do to get over it, unmistakably. The Dharma is the medicine to help us do it. And the Dharma is the real refuge. Right? The Dharma is the real refuge. When we actualize the Dharma in our mind, we are free of suffering, free of dukkha. And then the Sangha are the ideal friends for helping us to realize this refuge. The Buddha is definitely what we will attain. The Dharma is definitely the method of attainment. The Sangha will definitely help us to do that. Oh, I took it out of here. There's a quote in here, maybe I can find it, where His Holiness, well, maybe I don't, maybe I just paraphrase it. Because in terms of looking at these lists and comparing these things, His Holiness again emphasizes that if you want to take refuge, okay, we know these. He didn't say that, I said that part. But he said, to take refuge, we have to understand what the Dharma is. We have to understand. We have to study, we have to know, especially said in the 21st century when people are well educated and they have good minds, we have to understand what the teachings are about. It's not about blind faith. It's not about even sort of, wishing faith. Like I practice a little and maybe a little bit of practice will carry me along. It's like, to apply our minds, to apply our own practice, our own reasoning to understand and realize this. That is the Dharma. That's the medicine we have to take in order to become the three jewels. Venerable Children said His Holiness doesn't want people to be fixated on external people as their objects of refuge. Worshipping our gurus and our teachers doesn't work. In fact, it really makes a mess. So getting very clear about the source of our direction is good. So then there's a list of benefits of taking refuge. Lamrim Chenmo has two different sets, and Venerable Children gave the list of the benefits from the oral tradition. So I thought we'd look at the other list. The benefits as they appear in the Compendium of Determinations by a Sangha. And I want to repeat, as I was studying this and now as I'm saying it, a list of lists is just a list of lists. And a notebook of lists is just a list of lists. So we can go through these and we can write them down, but if we don't spend time really thinking about them, it's just a list of lists. Boring. You might think refuge would be a boring topic, and it's not. So, here's a list. The benefits as they appear in the Compendium of Determinations explained in two sets of 4. The first set, 1. Benefits of taking refuge in the three jewels, you will obtain vast merit. And what's quoted is the immortal drumbeat Dharani that says, the Bhagavan Buddha is inconceivable. The sublime teaching is also inconceivable. The noble community is inconceivable. For those having faith in the inconceivable, the fruition is also inconceivable. That's pretty big. This is a handout from the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics. So it says the qualities of three jewels are totally beyond our ordinary perception. By taking our refuge, we are directing our minds towards that, towards attaining happiness in future lives, liberation, or enlightenment. It's a quote I used during our talk from... Venerable Children quoted it too. Geshe Patoa in here said, no, it was Jay Rinpoche who said this, what we turn our mind to, right? What we become absorbed in. What we reflect on is what our mind becomes absorbed in. So, here's what they're saying, is we turn our mind to the Buddha Dharma Sangha. We direct our minds toward the energy, the positive energy or the merit that we create far exceeds the positive energy we generate in other activities. Second benefit, you will obtain both joy and supreme joy. The verse that Lama Tsongkhapa uses says, those who, recalling the Buddha during the day and night, take refuge in him, gain the advantage of being human. But even though the verse explicitly mentions the Buddha, it can be applied to the Dharma and the Sangha as well. Interesting question. So we should continuously recollect our understanding of the three jewels. What does it mean to be a Buddha or a Sangha? Now think about that. What does that mean? To really think in our reflection, what does Dharma refer to? What are the purpose, the nature, and the benefit of the three jewels? By making a habit to reflect daily upon the three jewels, then we make our precious human life meaningful. So the third and fourth benefits, you will obtain concentration and you will obtain purity. So this actually refers to taking refuge as the basis for attaining the union of calm abiding and special insight. Second set of 4, you will have great protection. 2, you will reduce, extinguish, and totally annihilate all obstructions derived from incorrect beliefs.
Say that again. Reduce, extinguish, and annihilate.
All obstructions derived from incorrect beliefs. So all our wrong views, since beginning of this time, we've relied upon faulty systems, harmful teachers, erroneous teachings. As a result, we've accumulated numerous negativities of body, speech, and mind, which now create serious obstacles to our Dharma practice. Through taking refuge, we can gradually reduce and eventually totally eradicate them. Why? Because by taking refuge, we're actually learning, developing the wisdom to understand the true nature of things, overcoming our wrong views, refuting our wrong views.
Sorry, Alex.
Sure. Number 3, you are counted among excellent persons who genuinely accomplish the sublime. Through taking refuge, we will be counted as excellent persons whose actions of body, speech, and mind gradually become pure. And then 4, you delight and receive the approval of your teachers and spiritual companions and of the celestial beings who take joy in the teaching. So for everyone who is wanting approval from their teacher, this is the way. When we take refuge and practice according to our refuge precepts, the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and spiritual teachers will be greatly delighted and rejoice.
Talk about the difference between joy and supreme joy.
It doesn't talk about the difference between joy and supreme joy. You know there is one, but I don't know, and I won't make it up. Oh, the second set of 4. The third one was you reduce and eliminate. Oops, wrong one. Yes, you are counted among excellent persons who would genuinely accomplish the sublime. The first one of the second of 4, you will have great protection. And we talked about that in the other list too, I believe.
Yeah, we can't be harmed by it.
Yeah, we can't be harmed, right? Can't be harmed. Why?
As we purify.
We restrain ourselves.
We restrain ourselves from creating the negative karma that would cause us to be harmed. We purify.
Reasons to harm us.
Yes, we stop the reasons to be harmed.
And also our understanding of harm.
Yeah, our understanding of harm changes. Our interpretation of harm changes. Yeah. So Venerable finished the last talk that she gave on this by saying the guidelines for refuge are in the Blue Prayer Book. And I thought we would go through them, but I forgot to bring our Blue Prayer Book up here. Does somebody have one handy? I have a version in here, but I don't think it's the same one. So let's just go through these, because everybody in this room anyway has taken refuge in some precepts, right? So while I'm looking this up, on the basis of having taken refuge, how have people's lives changed? A lot. How?
Well, when I took refuge, I took 5 precepts, and so part of taking refuge is you practicing the Dharma, and those 5 precepts of practicing the Dharma.
Yes, so
Stop killing things, for one thing. I used to be a hunter, fisherman, and a mosquito swisher.
okay, so taking refuge took the 5 precepts as well. Practicing, keeping the precepts is practicing the Dharma, is part of practicing refuge, really. And in not killing, you no longer catch fish, kill deer, smash mosquitoes. That's huge.
It is. I think it changes the outlook to a more gentle view of everything.
Yeah, yeah. So a more gentle view of everything, every being and everything.
Every being.
Every being changed.
When I think of taking refuge, taking refuge in the fridge, taking refuge in the TV really helps me. It's simple, but it really helps me. What do you take refuge in? So when you were saying that it's important to learn the teachings and everything, because then you understand why you say, Buddha, please help me. I have my hand to do something wrong, or my mind is going to do. I do not want to do that. So you come back to and tap into that compassion. That for me, that's what it means taking refuge.
Yeah.
So the Buddha give tons of teaching to be able to liberate us, right? From the suffering. But if I don't understand what is the suffering, that's what I reach for all the time.
Right.
Because I don't know.
So let me paraphrase
it. It gives me the strength, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, teachings and all of that. Give me the strength to say no.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm sorry I didn't have you just come up and do this. But basically, that idea that Venerable talked about when she gave this teaching is what we normally take refuge in: the refrigerator, the credit card, the shopping mall, the TV, the whatever, our relationships, cars, food, well, all that stuff. Pleasure. Taking refuge in pleasure. Taking pleasure. Yeah. So being aware that that is where we are taking refuge. And then learning more and more about what the Buddha is teaching and really getting that into our heads, hearts, that this is not happiness. And so then drawing on that as the strength to, when you see our hand in the proverbial cookie jar, like Ben Kugyul, Geshe Ben Kugyul, whatever his name is, we say no. And we ask for support from Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We rely on our refuge to turn your mind. Yeah, the strength builds from taking refuge.
You know internally that if I say no to that, I will gain something out of that.
Yes.
I will gain. I will.
Yeah. So if we turn our mind away, we gain. And it makes a habit. It's like our power of determination makes our habit to keep turning. Keep turning. Yeah, nice.
Me, I found it also very helpful. When before I really kind of took refuge or understood a little bit more, I knew there are many kind of wise people. You know, at that time I was at the university and I thought, okay, there are many authorities, they have a lot of knowledge. Okay, I started to learn from them, but I had not really found a foundation yet, a complete reasonable answer to many of my questions. Here was this person who gave me that answer or that, but then the question regarding to my own life wasn't answered. So, and then turning to the Buddha's teaching, there we are. I had all the answers. Not specifically probably to interrelational relationships between nations, yet how to do it practically, but the foundation of that, what we need to develop such relationships, that answer. That I missed in the society.
Yeah, so relying on a lot of wise people before you met the Dharma, and trying to learn. And you were in when you were in your university, you were studying political systems, and right. But until you met the Dharma, and met the Buddha's teachings, where you have the foundation for understanding really what makes a relief of suffering. What relieves our dukkha, what makes relationships between people and nations work. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Yes.
And for mine, it was, I think, up until the Dharma, I wanted happiness, I wanted to avoid suffering, but the other spiritual traditions never gave me this step-by-step. There was this whole thing about causality.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing
Yeah.
about the triple jewel, it's a whole thing about a dependent arising. If you want that, this is what you have to do. So just the whole logic, the interrelationship of cause and effect.
Yeah.
You want to become Arya Sangha, this is what you do.
Yeah.
You want to be free from suffering, this is what you do.
So the Buddha's teaching is very clear in the step-by-step
No,
way of
magical
like, yeah, it's not magical. You don't have to just believe and hope or cross your fingers and 3 times or something like that. The Buddha says, create the cause this way and you get this result. Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna gain something.
You're going to gain something.
The result you want.
Anybody else?
I think one thing we take refuge in is being too busy to spend time practicing.
Yeah, for sure. We take refuge in being too busy to spend time practicing.
It's like, oh, I could be reading, but oh, maybe I'll go do this.
Yeah.
In my study time.
Yeah. All right. Anybody online?
Yeah, lots of good responses actually.
Oh, what do you got?
Well, someone says, refuge reminds me that all of us have the potential to awaken, so it gives me hope when events in the world seem hopeless. It's much easier to bring my mind back to a positive state. So quite a few people talked about refuge giving a sense of a big picture.
So refuge is a big picture, refuge giving hope when the world looks like it's going down the tubes.
Having more awareness about their actions and thoughts after
Yeah.
they've taken refuge. A sense of peace and commitment, a sense of being accepted into something very important, a sense of legitimacy and direction.
Legitimacy, direction, being accepted into something that's important, a sense of peace, a sense of direction. Yeah, using our life in a meaningful way. Yeah, very, very, yeah. And how easy it is for our ignorance and our negative habits of mind to kind of slip off of this. That this precious jewel, these 3 precious jewels are right here in our heart, lighting our way, and it's so easy to veil of ignorance. All right, so guidelines for practicing refuge. This helps us. They are in the Pearl of Wisdom 1 book on page 88. Having taken, we're good with time, yeah. Having taken refuge, a safe and sound direction in the 3 jewels, it is advantageous to follow certain guidelines for practice in order to make progress. So, 1, in analogy to taking refuge in the Buddha, commit yourself wholeheartedly to a qualified spiritual mentor. From this very text, this Gomchen Lamrim, the kind and venerable spiritual master is the root of all good qualities. Seeing that dependence on him or her is the root of the path, may we do so. An analogy to taking refuge in the Dharma, listen to and study the teachings as well as put them into practice in your daily life. And so taking the opportunity to go to teachings when we have the opportunity, right? Taking the opportunity to study. Thank you for that reminder, Venerable Losang. At study time, don't keep working on your computer, Venerable Chenny. Go study, right? An analogy to taking refuge in the Sangha, respect the Sangha as your spiritual companions and follow the good example they set. Avoid being rough and arrogant, running after any desirable object you see and criticizing anything that meets with your disapproval. Should we put this one on the bathroom mirror?
It's getting crowded in there.
Yeah, you can read a lot in the bathroom.
I find that not avoid criticizing everything that doesn't meet with your approval. Very important in trying to develop a positive mind.
Yeah.
It can be susceptible to joy, because when you're just critical all the time, no joy.
Absolutely. So that critical mind prevents joy, and it's also kind of makes it hard to like anybody.
Including yourself.
Including yourself, yeah. Avoid being rough and arrogant, running after any desirable object you see, and criticizing anything that meets with your disapproval. It's a great value of going into silence when we go into retreat. Oh, hear that voice that is not going to be speaking it out. Number 5, be friendly and kind to others and be concerned more with correcting your own faults than with pointing out those of others.
Tells us again and again.
And we have that on our, we do have that on our mirrors. That quote from His Holiness. Much better to correct your own faults, but so much easier to correct somebody else's.
Right in front of you.
Yeah, there you are. Number 6, as much as possible, avoid the 10 non-virtuous actions and take and keep precepts. Number 7, have a compassionate and sympathetic heart towards all other sentient beings. So really cultivating that. And then making special offerings to the 3 jewels or the on Buddhist festival days. So, we send out that email every Buddhist holy day reminding people to take precepts and stuff. Yeah, I'll go through these quickly. Guidelines in terms of each of the 3 jewels. So having taken refuge in the Buddha, who has purified all defilements and developed all excellent qualities, do not turn for refuge to worldly deities. They lack the capacity to guide you. Respect images of the Buddha. Do not put them in low or dirty places. Step over them. Sell them. Use them as collateral. And when looking at Buddha images, do not discriminate. This Buddha is beautiful, but this one is not. So we can discern the artistry or the skill of the maker, but not criticize the Buddha. Do not treat with respect expensive and impressive statues while neglecting those that are damaged or less costly. Having taken refuge in the Dharma, avoid harming any living being. Also respect the written words which describe the path to awakening by keeping the text clean and in high places. Avoid stepping over them, putting them on the floor, or throwing them in the rubbish when they are old. So best to burn or recycle old Dharma materials. And 3, having taken refuge in the Sangha, do not cultivate the friendship of people who criticize the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or who have unruly behavior, or who do harmful actions. By becoming friendly, or maybe staying friendly with such people, you may be influenced in the wrong way by them. However, that does not mean you should criticize or not have compassion for them, right? So that's clear. And avoid people that would take us away from avoid associating with people who would take us away from our goals, how we really want to live, but not with a critical mind, to hold them in compassion. Also respect monks and nuns, as they are people who are making earnest efforts to actualize the teachings. Respecting them helps your mind. That means respecting each other too. Helps your mind be appreciating their qualities and open to learn from their example. By respecting even the robes of ordained beings, you will be happy and inspired when seeing them. And we'll end with these common guidelines. Mindful of the qualities, skills, and differences between the 3 jewels and other possible refuges, repeatedly take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Remembering their kindness, make offerings to them, especially offering your food before you eat. Cancer Wangdak said, we eat, we drink all day long. Make offerings. Mindful of their compassion, encourage others to take refuge in the 3 jewels. Remembering the benefits of taking refuge, do so 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening by reciting and reflecting on any of the refuge prayers. Do all actions by entrusting yourself to the 3 jewels. Do not forsake your refuge at the cost of your life or even as a joke. So the guidelines for the practice of refuge are a really clear way of practicing. So I want to finish with His Holiness. Here's the quote I was missing. While people may take refuge in the Three Jewels for a variety of reasons, stable refuge comes from knowing and understanding the teachings through reasoning and experience, thus confirming for ourselves that the Buddha's teachings are true. The Buddha himself encouraged us to understand his teachings, not to follow them blindly. This is especially so in the 21st century when literacy and education are widespread and people are not content with blind belief. And he goes from there and says, the younger generation is not going to follow the Dharma if we don't enact it and, study it and know it well, because reasoning is how people think these days, right? So, with Venerable Chögyin's encouragement and with His Holiness the Dalai Lama's encouragement and with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha's encouragement, we really deepen our understanding of the Three Jewels, the qualities of the Three Jewels, and our potential to become them, and the steps in order to do that, so that we can really actualize our aspirations and create the specific causes to make that happen. Okay, anything else? Last words? Yes?
I read this yesterday and it's just sort of very touching. This is from Betsy Knapper's book on the Grounds and Paths.
Yeah.
And
Here.
well, so it's actually a footnote. It's in the section of the book where she's talking about what first ground bodhisattvas can do. Losang Gyaltsen explained that from the side of the Buddhas and bodhisattvas, their blessings are always flowing to us. But from our side, we don't know whether they've entered us or not. From this point, bodhisattvas know, meaning the first ground bodhisattvas, that they've received those blessings, and not just from one, but from 100 Buddhas. So just that first part, that their blessings are constantly flowing into us. This is their MO. We're like, just doing our own thing. But it's constant.
Yeah.
And sometime in the future we'll
Wake up to it.
yeah.
Thank you.